and our interests and that of other countries in the world.
Senator, as a retired Navy chief, my thoughts are often with those who serve our country. I know both candidates, both of you expressed support for Israel. If, despite your best diplomatic efforts, Iran attacks Israel, would you be willing to commit U.S. troops in support and defense of Israel, or would you wait on approval from the UN Security Council?
Well, thank you, Terry, and thank you for your service to the country. I want to say everything I ever learned about leadership, I learned from a chief petty officer, and I thank you. And I thank you, my friend. Thanks for serving. Let me say that we obviously would not wait for the United Nations Security Council. I think the realities are that both Russia and China would probably pose significant obstacles. And our challenge right now is the Iranians continue on the path to acquiring nuclear weapons. And it's a great threat. It's not just a threat to the state of Israel. It's a threat to the stability of the entire Middle East. If Iran acquires nuclear weapons, all the other countries will acquire them too. The tensions will be ratcheted up. What would you do if you were the Israelis and the president of a country says that they are determined to wipe you off the map, calls your country a stinking corpse? Now, Senator Obama, without precondition, wants to sit down and negotiate with them without preconditions. That's what he stated. Again, a matter of record. I want to make sure that the Iranians that we put enough pressure on the Iranians by joining with our allies, imposing significant, tough sanctions to modify their behavior. And I think we can do that.
Senator Obama.
Well, Terry, first of all, we honor your service, and we're grateful for it. We cannot allow Iran to get a nuclear weapon. It would be a game changer in the region. Not only would it threaten Israel, our strongest ally in the region and one of our strongest allies in the world, but it would also create a possibility of nuclear weapons falling into the hands of terrorists. So it's unacceptable, and I will do everything that's required to prevent it. And we will never take military options off the table, and it is important that we don't provide veto power to the United Nations or anyone else in acting in our interests.
President.
And it's a great threat.
We will never take military options off the table.
It's a threat to the stability of the entire Middle East. If Iran acquires nuclear weapons, all the other countries will acquire them too. The Iranians continue on the path to acquiring nuclear weapons.
Well, it's curious. It talks about a best-case scenario for an Iranian nuclear program, but it just jumps through some identified technological hurdles as if they don't exist, such as, can Iran produce a P2 centrifuge that functions? We don't know if Iran can do that yet. Where are they going to get the uranium hexafluoride? They've got 100 kilograms provided by China. That's enough to do low-level testing. But to actually run a cascade that enriches uranium, Iran will have to use its own indigenous supply of uranium ore, which is heavily contaminated with the element molybdenum. Iran can't separate molybdenum from its uranium. So if they run UF6, uranium hexafluoride, contaminated molybdenum, through a centrifuge cascade, they will destroy the cascade. This is known. This is known by everybody. So this is absurd in the extreme to talk about Iran suddenly representing a threat. We know Iran doesn't represent a threat. We know that Iran has no technical capability to enrich on the level that they've talked. They're still very much at the beginning stages of this process. And let me remind everybody that nothing Iran's accused of doing is illegal. They're permitted to do all of this under the Non-Proliferation Treaty, which again represents the absurdity of this whole process, where we're condemning Iran for doing that which is permitted under a treaty which has been signed and entered into force and has UN inspectors on the ground verifying Iranian compliance. So,
well, as much as I can tell about it, it simply says that they looked very hard through very highly technical, what they call national technical means. that is that satellites, and occasionally we do run agents. We and the Israelis both have people that do go inside Iran and run classified covert agents, operations rather, to try and sniff out nuclear detection materials, radiation materials, and we found nothing. That doesn't mean Iran doesn't have some dark, deep secret, but the CIA told the White House we have found no evidence of a major ongoing weapons program. And they also warned the White House that if they were to, their assessment was that if the United States did attack Iran, there's been much talk about that, pro and con, it could play right into Iran's hands and create an even bigger problem for us all over the Middle East.
So does this have echoes of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq to you?
Oh, it sure does, because when that report came in, if you remember, the White House before Iraq was simply dismissing any allegation from anybody in the American intelligence community and outside, suggesting that Iraq did not have nuclear weapons. There were such reports, and they were dismissed. This report was dismissed by the White House, and right now the flavor of the week is there's new intelligence from the Israelis, the Israeli Secret Service that's being circulated in Washington, saying that indeed there is evidence that brand new evidence from human sources that Iran is trying to make a bomb. So we have this same old game going back and forth as we did before 2003.
Yeah, no signs that America is going to change its view on what Iran is up to.
Well, there sure is no signs that the election means that Mr. Bush and Mr. Cheney are suddenly going to decide that the Democrats at heart are going to go backwards. All they've been saying publicly is we're going to stay the course in Iraq, and we're not backing off. They haven't backed off anything they've said about the dangers of a nuclear-armed Iran and whether or not there is intelligence.
Do you know when this CIA report was written?
No, it was done this fall. It was submitted within the last, I heard about it about 4 or 5 weeks ago, so it was done late this fall. The Israeli intelligence came at roughly just at the time the CIA assessment was given. So we have competing interests as usual. There always are in the intelligence community. But the history of Bush and Cheney is that they don't trust the CIA. They think it's not creative enough when it comes to looking at hard information and doesn't deal with intentions enough. And so that same tension that existed before we went to war with Iraq with all kinds of adverse consequences are existing again. In fact, I can just add that the Israeli intelligence, the human intelligence from sources inside Iran, was handled inside the White House exclusively and not at the CIA. In other words, the CIA did not get a chance to analyze it and make an assessment. It was stovepiped is the word for, it's the word we use for intelligence to please.